And now for one of the worst romantasy books I have ever read. Drumroll, please. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Courtney, and today we are gonna go over some of my July reads and my August/September hopefuls, given that we are already mostly the way through August and it hasn't been going well. So, but you know what? At least July was a good reading month. We have that going for us. My goal initially at the beginning of the year was to read 100 books by the end of the year. That's not going so well. It was going pretty well at the beginning of the year. I was reading like an average of 8-ish books a month, which is pretty on track. But then life happened. Plus I decided I wanted to devote a little bit more time on YouTube and kind of grow a little bit more there. And that requires significantly more time. And that is why we're here. We read a total of 7 books and we even had 1 DNF. Let's talk about it. So we started the month of July a little wild with Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn. Boy, was this a doozy. I ended up getting this from a used bookstore because I do feel a little bit weird buying thrillers at full price because of how quickly I go through them. But I will say, despite how small this is, this took me a little bit to get through because it's very dense and very heavy. I'm sure you can probably guess what this implies. So yes, heavy. Trigger warning on this one, and I mean heavy. And also, despite it being a thriller, it's not as easily bingeable. I would say somehow it's both thrilling, but also a little bit hard to get through. Like, I felt like I needed frequent breaks from this. Also, the beginning starts absolutely wild, and it continued to just get more and more wild. And the ending of this one completely shocked me. Not at all what I expected. It's like when you know the ending and you look back, it almost seems obvious, but it's not obvious while you're reading it, if that makes sense. This book was adapted into a TV show, and I do feel like, for once, it was done very well. Of course, it's not exactly word for word, exactly the same. Books can't be translated literally from book to TV show. Some things have to give, but it was done very well and I really enjoyed it. I did also have to take breaks while watching it because it is just so disturbing. I don't know, maybe I'm dramatic. And I rated this one 4 out of 5. And it did kick off a little bit of a thriller kick. This month is full of thrillers. Not all thrillers, but it's very thriller heavy. Okay, now, and I don't know what possessed me to read a Freida McFadden book after reading a really good true thriller, but for some reason I did, and I read The Coworker by Freida McFadden. Miss Freida is very hit or miss, I believe, and I would categorize her books as like the Lifetime movie network of thrillers. They're not exceptional masterpieces by any measure, but they are usually a good time and they're so easily readable. They're such quick reads. But honestly, you set yourself up for failure if you read Freida McFadden after reading pretty much any other thriller. And I did end up giving this a 3-star. And I would say that's slightly below average of what I give Freida McFadden. I would say she hovers around like a 3.5, 4-star. And listen, I did rate The Housemaid 5 stars. Hear me out. That was my first ever thriller. Well, my first ever thriller as an adult. So the bar was not very high to begin with. And then book 2, I think I rated 4 stars, and the third 5 stars. Everyone disagrees with that opinion, but again, the bar was super low, and I bet if I reread them now, I would not rate them as high. But The Coworker, where do we begin? This was okay. I learned more about turtles than I ever thought that I would. And why did I need to learn so much about turtles? Turtles were the entire personality trait of our main character. Like most Freida McFadden books, it is very bingeable, very easy to read, kind of hard to put down because it just leads you into the next, into the next, into the next. But when we got to the twist, I was underwhelmed. I was not wowed by any means. I was kind of left with a, that's it. And I sort of hated everybody by the end of this. It's almost like looking back, should I have even rated it 3 stars? I feel like the way it works with every book I rate 3 stars is the more that I think about it, the worse it gets in my head. But did I learn? No, of course not, because we immediately followed that with another Freida McFadden book. And this one is The Divorce, which is one of her newer releases. At least with this one, I did enjoy it more. I rated it 0.75 stars more. Not even a single star more, but at least more. I will say the twist in this was very good. I was quite shocked. I do think it's very impressive when an author can make you feel one way toward a character and then by the end completely different. So I commend Miss Freida on that. And this is the point in the month when I started to get a little bit of anxiety from reading so many thrillers back to back because I also had read some in June. I can only handle short bursts of thrillers before it starts to affect my mental well-being. We took a pause after that. And now, for one of the worst romantasy books I have ever read, drumroll please, The Wicked Sea. The Wicked Sea by Jordan Stephanie Gray is something I think I wish I could erase from my brain. Now, what does this book have going for it? Well, it's pretty, sprayed edges, the artwork under the dust jacket, magnificent. That's all that's good about it. Now, this took me 10 days to read, which doesn't seem like a lot. Depending on how fast you read books, that may seem good. For me, for a book that's less than 500 pages, I started to just read it out of spite at a certain point. See, it takes a lot for me to DNF. What happens most of the time is I will just finish a book purely out of spite and just to feel justified in my dislike and distaste for it. So just know, this wasn't a DNF for me. It was I want to fully read this to fully be able to judge it. And boy, am I judging it. This is okay, I'm gonna describe the book, and as I describe it, you could probably tell that it was not going to be good from the get-go. Okay, so this is a romantasy between a mermaid with coral hair and a warlock. And the thing that annoys me is this is considered it's enemies to lovers, right? It's not. It is the most insta-lusty thing that I have ever read in my life. They hate each other for about 2 seconds before they just start getting so horny for each other, and I just don't. And listen, when we got to the first spicy scene, I was like, okay, this is better than I expected. I think a little bit more effort was put into the spice scene than the story itself, but maybe that was the goal. However, when we got to the second spice scene, I'm not being overdramatic when I tell you it was the worst spice scene I've ever read in my entire life. I want to burn it from my brain. It was so bad. I'm trying to describe these books with the least amount of spoilers possible, and I don't want to give away too much, but yeah, this was a 2-star read. I usually only save my 1 stars for my DNFs. This was very close to being a 1 star. The only thing that saved it from a 1 star was the fact that I, unfortunately, finished it. I'm kind of learning that it's a bit of a red flag when books have so much effort put into the appearance, because I feel like a lot of the time the budget was spent on the looks rather than the writing. And this put me in a slump. There's 2 types of slumps, okay? One, the slump that you get into because the book you finish is so bad that you just don't feel like you want to read anything. You're worried that everything you read from now on is going to be tainted by your perception of the previous book. The second type of slump is when a book is so good that you don't want to read another one because you don't think any other books are going to be able to compare to what you just read. This was a bad slump. But you know, that's why we move on to bigger and better things. And that leads me to my next book, which is Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinniman. Now, while I own the physical copy of this, I did not read the physical copy. I listened to the audiobook because my boyfriend recommended I read it that way. I'm not a big audiobook listener. I have issues with focusing with audiobooks, and I don't know what it is, but usually physical books, because I'm doing something with my hands, I have an easier time keeping my attention. But I will say, absolutely 0 regrets listening to this on audiobook. And if you've never listened to this before and you start listening and think, wow, how did he afford so many cast members for the audio? It's one person. One person is voicing all of the characters, even the female characters. I wasn't sure I was gonna like it when I started it, but the further I got into the book, the more I just absolutely loved it. I am an avid lover of video games, RPGs, all of that stuff, so this was really up my alley, but I do think this is enjoyable by people that maybe don't like video games or don't really have that nerdy side to them. I'm honestly a little bit afraid to listen to any other audiobooks because I don't think any of them can simply compare to this. And I want to start book 2 soon, but just it's like I have to fight with my brain to start an audiobook. Once I start it, smooth sailing. It's just getting there. This is very bingeable, a very quick read. So I recommend that you try it. The books do get bigger and bigger as they go on though. Okay, now I know that I said I was on a thriller break. That didn't last very long. I don't own the physical copy, so I'll just put an image up here. But the next book I read was Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter, and I read this because it was recommended to me by my friend Amy. This is another one of those thrillers that just leaves you feeling so unsettled, especially as a woman. 5 stars. 5-star read. In fact, I loved this book so much, despite how awful it made me feel, that I stayed up way too late just so I could finish it. I hated myself the next day, but sometimes, you know, that's just the price we pay as readers. I'm gonna do my best to give a summary. So there's two sisters that are estranged. However, they were brought together during a funeral. These two sisters had a third sister that went missing years ago. And now there's another girl that's gone missing in similar circumstances. They do some investigating and find that there's a link between their missing sister and this other woman that has gone missing. And the truth is stomach churning. I don't recommend reading this at night because as you're reading it, your heart rate is gonna go through the roof and then you're not gonna be able to sleep, so you have to keep reading, but there's never a calm moment. Your heart just keeps going faster and faster and faster. So eventually you have to finish the book at 3 a.m. I remember in the middle of reading this, I actually had to stop and turn on some SpongeBob to make me feel a little less freaked out. But again, 5 stars. Absolutely 5 stars. And thank you, Amy, for ruining my sleep. Okay, and now we are on to our final read of July, and that is The Jsaad Heir. When I say I want enemies to lovers, this is what I mean. This enemies to lovers is absolutely scrumptious, amazing slow burn. I don't want to lead you astray though, that this is not a romantasy. This has fantasy as the primary plot and a very minor romantic subplot. So I would call this a romantic fantasy. So don't go into this expecting a lot of romance. The romance is very backseat, but when it does appear, delectable. Also unexpected. I feel like this had almost a spooky Halloween-ish vibe to it, which is perfect since Halloween is coming. Yes, it's still 2 months away, but spooky season has started, let's be real. This is an Egyptian-inspired fantasy, and I will admit there are a few terms in here that I did have to look up, like the word for territory, for example. It's not super obvious that that's what they're referring to, but once you become familiar with the language, it's second nature. I do feel like it gives a little bit of a Throne of Glass vibe, but I don't want you going into this thinking it's gonna be like Throne of Glass, because I think that's gonna set you up for failure. Our main character, Sylvia, as the title implies, is the heir of Jsaad. And what is Jsaad? Jsaad is a kingdom that burned 10 years ago. And why did it burn? Because they had magic. Now, everyone believed that Sylvia had died in this massacre when the kingdom burned because they wanted to end the royal bloodline. But Sylvia survived and is living under a new identity in a new kingdom. I can see how this sounds very Throne of Glass, especially the more that I say this. But it's funny, I didn't really get Throne of Glass until someone mentioned that to me. So it's not one for one, I don't think. Eventually, she accidentally kills a guard, and the heir of another kingdom, Eren, catches her speaking the death rites of Jsaad and using magic. So they enter a shaky alliance. She helps him hunt the rest of the Jsaadi people because their existence is illegal. If you are found out to be Jsaadi, you are executed in exchange for her life. And they train in close proximity. Can you guess what happens? I gave this 4.5 stars and immediately started on the next book. So that's July. Hi, Courtney from the future here. Just interjecting to note that I completely forgot to talk about my one DNF of the month, and that is We Are Legion. Yeah, after reading this, it felt like the author had never written a woman before in his life. I made it about 11% in before I couldn't take it anymore. So you will be hearing more about that in a future video, so stay tuned. Now, what is for August and September? Well, like I mentioned, I started book 2 of The Jsaad Heir, The Jsaad Crown. And don't worry, we'll cover my thoughts in the next wrap up. And just this morning, actually, I finally started The Night in the Moth. I had seen so many raving reviews about this book, but I was afraid to start it because at the time when this came out, I was in a huge romantasy slump, and I was afraid that this was going to be like all the other recent ones that I had read. But, you know, I decided I would give it a try. I'm about 40 pages in, and I'm loving it. Plenty of time for that to change, but I have high hopes. Also, if you get this paperback copy, this bad boy is dense. This is so heavy, and the paper is so thick, and it feels so nice. I'm almost afraid to read it, but that almost makes me want to read it more. Oh, and it smells so good. I love the smell of books. I used to, whenever I was reading, I would just read and then get like the intrusive thought to just like sniff it. So I'd be mid-sentence and just go, can't get enough of it. Now I do believe I will be able to finish this by the end of the month. And if I don't, that's gonna be bad because we're already over halfway done with August and this is my second read. So I better finish it. And luckily that one is less than 500 pages. Now, after reading 2 back-to-back thick books, The Jsaad Heir and The Jsaad Crown, I need something short. I need a palate cleanser, you could say. So I thought, what better time than the present to read Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. Plus with the show, I feel like I have to read it. Although, listen, I'm not a big TV person. I have not watched Heated Rivalry. I have not watched The Summer I Turned Pretty. I don't watch most adaptations. I'm not caught up on what a lot of the good shows out nowadays are. Maybe I'll watch it. I only really watch stuff if my boyfriend turns it on because my instinct is not to turn on the TV, it's to open a book. I don't really have a good attention span when it comes to TV shows or movies. I have heard some mixed opinions of this. And when I hear a lot of mixed opinions, that makes me want to read it more. I feel like when everybody raves about a book, my expectations are just so high that if I read it and it doesn't meet those unreasonably high expectations, then I end up not liking it. I haven't read any reviews of this. I prefer not to read reviews because I feel like they taint my perception. I could go into something super hopeful, but then if I read a bunch of negative reviews, it sets me up to feel negatively about the book. I don't know if that's just me. I prefer to go in blind. I prefer to not even know what the books are about before I start them. Sometimes it's good to have like a general idea and of course to know the genre, but I prefer to go blind. Just like I don't even know what The Night and the Moth is about. I didn't know what The Jezzaud Heir was about. I feel like it's more fun that way. Obviously I know this is a romance, and I did read This Summer Will Be Different by this author, and I absolutely loved it. 5-star romance. Not usually a contemporary romance girly, but that one made me feel things I didn't know I was capable of feeling. So hopefully this will hit somewhat the same. I don't know if that's realistic. But I read This Summer Will Be Different within 24 hours, so hopefully I can read this within a similar amount of time to kind of buff up my numbers for the month. Okay, I know what I just said about thrillers, but I did add another one to my TBR that I want to read in August or September, and that is The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I heard it's disturbing, so let me know if it's a good idea, if I should read it. Let me know if you have read it. Is my mental health stable enough to read this? Time will tell. The next book that I want to read soon is Babel. I've heard her writing is very sophisticated, so I do expect that this will take a little bit longer to read. When I've talked about wanting to read this before, people keep telling me that they don't think I'm gonna like it, but I want to know why. What do you guys mean by that? Is it because you think I'm dumb? That better not be the reason. I mean, I am, but you're not supposed to know that. I have a feeling this will not be read or completed until September, but of course I'm delusional, and my ego says that I can finish it in August, of course. And my final hopeful for August or September is a reread of A Court of Thorns and Roses. Yes, this is the copy that I am bedazzling. I will not be reading this copy. I actually want to do a reread with the dramatized audiobooks. I'm not a rhinestone just fell off. I should probably stop handling this. I'm not a big book rereader. I'm just not. I've only reread one series ever, and that was The Bone Season. And one of the main reasons why I reread it is because the author republished it after having edited it a little bit. But I've heard such amazing things about the dramatized audiobooks. And because it's been so long since I finished the series, obviously I need to do a reread before 6 and 7 come out. Also, hopefully I will have finished all of the bedazzling before the next book comes out. Anyways, thank you so much for joining me for my July wrap up and my August, September hopefuls. Please let me know what you think I should read next because I am very undecided. Make sure you subscribe to keep up with me, and I'll see you next time.